Flags are flown at the half-mast across Rwanda. Commemorative activities are taking place nationwide from April to July. The entire nation mourns the victims of the 1994 genocide against Tutsi. The tragedy claimed over 1 million lives in just 100 days. This was the fastest genocide in the world history.
Also gave a warning to people that we were aware that these frictions could lead to something catastrophic, but nobody really believed it. My assessments were, and that's in the report I wrote and what the actions I wanted to take, the assessments from the political side of the mission had a different perspective. They thought I was overreacting. New York was busy with Yugoslavia and so on, so there was not a sufficient assessment of the reality that we had on the ground, no matter how many times I wrote them and called and discussed and so on.
The world's response was tragically inadequate. The international community's failure to intervene or even to prevent the genocide laid bare in shortcomings. The promise of never again was left unfulfilled.
In January 1994, the command of the United Nations mission in Rwanda sent a fax back to headquarters in New York with detailed intelligence that in Interahamwe were stockpiling weapons and compiling lists of Tutsis to be killed. He was then ordered to share the information with the very government which was preparing the genocide and to take no further action. The technology existed to disrupt the radio broadcasts that directed the killings. The planes capable of jamming those signals were available. Officials even calculated the hourly cost of the mission. In the end, the operation was deemed to be too expensive and potentially also a violation of Rwanda's sovereignty. So the cost was more it became too expensive. It was more expensive, especially when you, in their minds, those lives are really worthless.
The failure of the international community was starkly evident at the former Eto Kicukiro, now IPRC Kigali. Thousands of Tutsi have sought shelter there, trusting that peacekeepers would protect them, only to be abandoned.
At Eto Kicukiro, when the peacekeepers withdrew, thousands of desperate Tutsi were left to die. Such scenes were repeated across the country. If these forces had instead been supported to protect Rwandans, the killers could have been deterred and many people would still be alive. The lives saved by the United Nations peacekeepers who were allowed to remain makes clear how much more could have been done with the political will. Even as the killings accelerated, the language used to describe what was happening itself became a matter of calculation.
Maniraho Ernest was among thousands of Tutsi who sought refuge at Kicukiro. For him, the journey of suffering began a 15-minute walk from Kagarama, where his family lived, to St. Joseph Parish, just before reaching Kicukiro.
Ababyeyi baraganiriye hanyuma baza gufata icyemezo yuko tugomba guhongera hano kuri paruwasi ya Kicukiro. Ahangaha mpagaze.
Parents held discussions and decided that we should seek refuge here at Kicukiro Parish at the time. However, not all of us left home together. Some went to Center Christus in Remera, while others came here. When we arrived, we found this hall already full, packed with people from different places. That's when they took us to a room at the back of this hall where we stayed.
Twebwe batujyanye mu kumba k'inyuma kari ko muri no sare abariho tuba.
Maniraho Ernest and family members thought Kicukiro was a symbol of life, the area hosting United Nations peacekeeping troops. The mission was known as United Nations Assistance Mission for Rwanda, UNAMIR.
Umuhanda twanyuze ni inzira twaciyemo turimo kuza hano muri Eto nyirizina. Hari akarembo gatoya kari hepfo ariko twinjiriyemo kugira ngo tugere hano.
The road we used was the path through which we entered Eto Kicukiro. There was a small gate down there where we came in. To reach this road, we had to climb up where I am standing now, and this is where the main gates to the compound were located. There was a checkpoint manned by UNAMIL soldiers, and at first, they refused us in. When they turned us away, we went back and stayed on the football pitch. People kept pleading with them to allow us in, and later in the afternoon, they finally agreed, but first they checked us, and after that, they let us in.
Ubona mu masaha y'igicamunsi nibwo batwemereye turaza tugeze hano mu marembo baradusaka, minwari iradusaka, imaze kudusaka iratureka turinjira. Ahangaha mpagaze neza niho ayo marembo yarari. Twarinjiye tumaze kuhagera dusanga no mashuri ayangaya mureba hano.
We found school buildings overcrowded with people. That's where we stayed, while UNAMIL personnel were positioned over there. Many people had come from other areas like Kabeza, Niboi, and Gatenga. In the following days, more people kept arriving, including some who had been injured, among them my cousin. They took him to receive first aid at a small clinic over there.
Ndibuka ko hari na mukuru wanjye wo kwa mama wacu wari utuye mu Gatenga yinjiyemo hano bamaze kumutema. Icyo gihe bahise bamufata bajya kumuha ubuvuzi bw'ibanze. Hariya ndumva kuri rino shuri harimo ahantu binjiriramo hagati harimo akavuriro.
For those who are taking refuge at Kicukiro, April 11th remains an indelible memory. It was a day that starkly demonstrated how human lives were treated as less valuable than animals. On that day, Belgian Union peacekeepers troops evacuated with their dogs in vehicles, leaving the refugees behind in the hands of Interahamwe militias. Hudari Marie Rose, who was 20 years at that time, the image of that moment has stayed with her for years and will never fade from her memory.
Mu gitondo cy'itariki 11 niho nshaka kugera itariki yatubabaje, itariki mbese twaburiyeho isi yatuhindukanye, twese tuhinduka nk'ibishushungwe.
On the morning of the 11th, the day that deeply traumatized us, when it felt like the world had turned against us, we were all in shock when we learned that Minwar was going to leave us. We all started screaming. They had already packed up their belongings, while the Interahamwe had surrounded the entire compound and had begun firing into the air.
Tugenda tugwira tuba benshi. Baravuga ngo yewe ngo Minwar igiye kudusiga. Twese twavugije induru tuti Minwar igiye kudusiga tuti bati bagiye kugenda bati bamaze no gufunga ibintu byabo bati turagowe bati ahubwo dutabaze mu ijuru bati uwiteka aze kutwagira bati kubera ko naho interahamwe zari inyuma y'iki kigo zinjiyemo baratangira barasa mu kirere noneho.
At the same time, the Minuar soldiers were loading their equipment and even their dogs into military trucks. We all cried out in fear. Parents began to weep. I was 20 years old at the time, crying and asking my mother, "What are we going to do now?" The mothers were crying too. It was complete chaos and despair.
turabigenza dute mama ati bane banjye muragira ngo mbasubize iki ati se ati muragira ngo tujye hehe ati se n'aba mama batangira kurira ibintu birivanga.
Victims of the Kicukiro massacre are laid to rest at the Nyanza Genocide Memorial. Every April 11th, the nation gathers here to remember and reflect.
Dufite umutekano ugenda isaha iyo ariyo yose ushakiye amasaha iyo ariyo yose.
Today, we have security at any time and can go wherever we want, which was not possible back then. I am grateful to the government for providing us with that security. They paid for our education, helped us study, and continue to support our daily lives. The Inhotanyi are alive, and we are still grateful to them because without them, we would not be alive today. They were helped by God so that we could survive. God enabled them, and through that, we live.
Kandi Inkotanyi turacyakomeza kuzishimira kuko iyo zitabaho ntabwo twari kuba tukiriho ubu ngubu. Zafashijwe n'Imana kugira ngo tubeho. Imana irazishoboza natwe tubaho.
Yet many perpetrators still walk free, finding refuge in countries that claim to uphold human rights and justice. Survivors continue to seek accountability. The continued inability to dismantle the FDR, a group rooted in genocide ideology, serves as a stark reminder on the ongoing challenges. It reflects the harsh reality that the world still has much to learn from past failures in addressing such threats and ensuring lasting peace. This underscores the urgent need to stand up against hate speech and extremism, fostering a collective commitment to prevent history from repeating itself.
Should understand that the danger of moral passivity in the face of hatred and violent extremism we should understand that danger, especially in the face of hatred and violent extremism. Africans, more than most, we must be reminded by all this history. Today, our continent accounts for the majority of the world's active conflicts. In 1994, Africa's collective institutions also failed to respond. I say this because the call for African sovereignty, legitimate and necessary as it is, must also mean that African institutions act decisively when Africans are at risk. Bad actors must not be allowed to hide behind the principle of sovereignty, to evade responsibility for abuses or deny citizens their rights. We cannot afford to repeat the mistakes of the past. Genocide ideology is still spreading in our region, left unchecked, it has the power to take us all backwards again.
The commemorative activities at Nyanza on April 11th each year serve as a powerful call to action. They remind the international community that the pledge to never again must be translated into concrete, meaningful action. It is a solemn reminder that the world must unite in the face of evil to prevent history from repeating itself.
Ntibizongera ukundi.
Never again.
Never again.
Never again. Plus jamais.
Nunca mais.
Never again.
Never again.
Never again.
Kamwe tena.
Twibuke, twiyubaka.